My name is Jade Swarbrick from Tribe 2005. This is my Piranha Challenge with my participant Matthew. Okay, so thank you for coming in today to have a chat about your diet.
Happy to be here.
So, as we've been discussing, I guess, as part of our program, we're going to work through what your dietary intake should be, so what your recommended intake should be. So we'll work through that, and then we'll go through a bit more about what your diet is in particular, and maybe work on some strategies to improve it where it needs improving, if at all.
Sounds great.
Perfect. Okay, so we'll just start with some real basic stuff. So we're just going to talk about what your BMI is. So what's your height?
About 198 centimeters.
Yeah, and your weight?
About 82 kilos.
82. Perfect. Do some quick maths here. Perfect. So you've got 20.5, which is in a healthy range, which is great. So good to see to start off with. So I'll just use your BMI now. Not super exciting. We'll just do this to calculate what your basal metabolic rate is, which is essentially the amount of calories your body needs just to live, so to breathe, these kind of functions. So I'll just do this one very quickly for you. Yep. Great, so that's 8062 kilojoules per day, so roughly about 2,000 and a bit thousand calories a day. However, given that you are a moving, living, breathing human that isn't in bed all day, we'll just do a bit of a calculation to work out what you should actually be eating, or what your energy expenditure is during the day. So looking at your, exercise amounts that you're doing during the day, which of these do you think you'd fit into the category of, so from bed rest, very sedentary, light activity, all the way through to vigorous activity in sort of an average day?
I would say at the moment, especially with COVID and working from home, I'd be a very sedentary, not moving much at all.
Very, very common answer at the moment as well. So we'll times that by 1.4. Yeah, awesome. And then that's 2687 calories or 11,000 kilojoules. So I'll obviously give you all this info to take after this. You don't need to remember all these numbers. But essentially the core of it is, in theory, if you're eating about 2,700 calories a day, you should be maintaining weight based on your current weight. However, another little spin, there's always extra little calories because of your height. So I know you said you're 198, which is very tall. The other calculations don't take into account your height as much. So you actually have an extra up to about 500 calories a day based on the total diet. So a lot of food, I'm sure you're very excited about this. We'll go through what you are eating. But then your total ends up being around about 3,100 calories a day.
Cool.
So lots of food for you, which is good. Wish I could eat 3,000 calories a day. Cool, so now we know kind of what your baseline is. Obviously in line with my scope of practice, which I know we've discussed. So as a personal trainer, I can't give you set meal plans or really specific dietary advice. So for this kind of thing, you need to go speak to a dietitian. So we can chat through, where you're at and what your goals are, and if you need to be referred. But I can provide, in line with the Australian Dietary Guidelines, broad recommendations as far as servings and intake. So that's what we'll talk about to begin with, but if you want more info, I can point you in that direction, if that sounds good.
Great.
Cool. So Australian Dietary Guidelines, you might have heard about them at school, or these things exist. So essentially there's 5 main guidelines. So I'll talk to you about each of them. Some will be less and more relevant for you, given that you're a man. So something like supporting and promoting breastfeeding, maybe not for you in particular, maybe your partner or in the future. So your first one's just around sort of choosing nutrient-dense foods and the right foods to fuel your body, which feels, intuitive. And then guideline 2 is the really big one, which is where we're going to spend most of our time today, is talking about your serves per food group, things like how much dairy, how much grains and meats you're having. So about having these in moderation, in line with both your current sort of health and fitness, but also your goals. Guideline 3 is the sad one, but it's around limiting sugar. So processed foods, high salt, high sugar kind of foods, discretionary choices. So of course, having them as part of your diet is a very normal thing, keeping some balance. but about doing this in moderation, essentially. Then there's around promoting and supporting breastfeeding. And then guideline 5 is just about storing and preparing food safely. So I'm sure we've all had food poisoning, not great. That's in there as well. Cool, okay, so now about you. So that's sort of my little spiel. So now we can get into tailoring, I guess understanding where you are at the moment, and then tailoring that ongoing. So I've got a little cheat sheet for you. So these is kind of to see what a serving size looks like. Because when someone says, okay, how many serves of vegetables do you have? It's kind of not intuitive to know that. So I'll leave this here so you can see sort of half a cup of veggies, or up to a cup of canned veggies, and then say for fruit it's 1 serving, and we'll go through this as we go down, but just to have a visual I find always helps.
Great.
Perfect. So your name is
Matthew. Richie.
Perfect. And the date today is
the 3rd.
I never know what the date is. Perfect. And what would you say your dietary goal would be?
I'm pretty happy with my body and weight as it currently is, so probably just to increase the amount of good nutrients that I'm taking in.
Perfect. That's a very good goal. Yeah. That's a really great goal. I think you'd find increasing in nutrients, I guess we'll talk about where you're at, but it'll help you with your energy, with your performance in the gym, day-to-day life. So absolutely having that right balance of nutrient density and micro and macronutrients absolutely helps with your overall life. So
great.
Very good.
Excellent.
Do you have any special dietary requirements?
No, not at all.
Allergies, nothing you know? Awesome. It's a nice easy one. Sweet. Okay, so we'll start from the top. So talking about vegetables, everyone's favourite. Thinking about like a typical day, how many serves, again thinking about that half a cup as like a benchmark of a serve, how many do you think that you would get in within a day?
Maybe I ate lots of vegetables, so maybe between like 4 and 6.
Perfect. Awesome. And then into fruit. So how many serves of fruit do you think
Not
you'd
much.
have a day?
On average, like 0, really.
Yeah.
I don't eat fruit that much.
That's fair enough. Cool. And then breads and cereals. So thinking about, say 1 slice is a serve. So actually serves, this is quite small.
Yes, right. So probably quite a few then. Half a cup of pasta.
Which isn't a lot of pasta.
Yeah, maybe 6 again. Maybe 5 or 6.
Yeah. Cool. And then dairy. So it's just down the bottom. It's not in order. But that's a cup of milk. So again, quite a bit, or 2 slices of cheese, 3/4 of a cup of yogurt.
I like this category, but I don't eat it that much. maybe 1 to 1.5 on average.
Yeah, perfect. That's great. And then meat alternatives, so things like tofu, tempeh, or any of your meats as well.
Maybe like 3,
Yeah, perfect. Cool, so now we'll just look at each of those in line with where the recommendation is that you are. But again, because you're a bit of a bigger guy, you should be eating maybe some more than the recommended, because this has a 19 to 50-year-old bracket, so it's very average. So looking at, say, veggies, for example, 6, which you said you're pretty much at, so that 5 to 6 mark. This might be a little bit of an opportunity there, which we can talk about. Fruit will be a big one. Bread, you look pretty good in. Dairy, and meat, you look pretty good in. Perfect. So then, just one more thing before we get to some strategies, would be your discretionary choices. This is your fun stuff. So things like lollies, chocolates, we've got our servings here. So this is the one metric that's actually in the week, not in a day. So thinking about averaged out over the week, so say 2 scoops of ice cream is a serving, or there's other stuff, even thin sausages. There's other processed foods in here that aren't all just chips and lollies, essentially. Wine and beer as well is in here if you're drinking. and soft drink, I know you don't have that much, but anything like that. So I know it's kind of hard to average out over a week, but say sort of on a daily basis, or
no, it wouldn't be good. I think it'd be like 10 plus, to be honest. Like
like a couple a day.
I think it would be 2 of those a day probably, and that's 14, isn't it? So yeah.
And is that I guess thinking about that timing, is that mostly in the evening or in snacks or
yeah, mostly in the evening probably. I generally eat healthier during the day.
Okay. And do you find that you're more hungry at night and that's why you're going to those discretionary choices? Or
probably, yeah. But also just the laziness of sort of sitting around and being able to eat food. I think there's a boredom element there that comes into play. And just because they're sweet snacks, it's very easy just to eat.
Yeah.
It's not like you're eating it for nutrients in the first place anyway.
True. Okay, perfect. So, awesome. So now I guess we could chat about some strategies. So given that within my scope, it's more around sort of guiding you. So if you could kind of think about some of these areas where there may be gaps, something like fruit, is there a way that you could introduce that in your days? Is there any fruits you enjoy, any times in the day you feel like it could fit potentially? Because we want to make some strategies that are easy to implement and that will fit within your week, and that you'll enjoy as well.
Maybe adding fruit to another meal would be good, because I find it hard to find the time just to eat a piece of fruit.
Yeah.
I guess I don't really have that in my day.
Yeah.
So perhaps adding that to maybe salads.
Yeah.
Or breakfast, maybe trying to have that. I don't really eat breakfast, which I guess isn't a very good thing though. So maybe I could introduce some of my dairy and fruit in by having yogurt and fruit for breakfast.
Yeah, that's a great one. That's an awesome way to get that in, because with your dairy and your fruit a little bit low, so that would be awesome. And you quite enjoy yogurt and fruit as a meal. Great. Awesome.
So maybe I could do that, and then that would hit all three things, so I would eat breakfast then as well.
Yeah, that's great. That's a really good strategy there, 100%. And then, so that brings your fruit up, because I think your fruit recommendation is, roughly 2. But again, it's, reasonably small. So if you did have that in the morning, then you can knock that out of the way. Don't worry about fruit for the rest of your day. And then thinking about dairy as well. So if you have some yogurt in the morning, that's a huge improvement. Is there anywhere else you can add things like milk? Like, do you have coffee at the moment?
No, I have coffee. I can add milk to coffee, which I currently don't do that much. Or sometimes.
Yeah, that's perfect.
And I can have more cheese. If I'm not allowed.
Always happy. And the dietary recommendations do say low-fat options where you can. So if you could do something like a skim milk in a coffee, low-fat cheese in a sandwich, these kinds of things to get that calcium and help your bones and teeth and all these good things. So and it's tasty, so why not eat more cheese? Great. And then, is there a way that you can see, I guess, that you could limit your discretionary choices, especially in the evening when you kind of flagged? Is there a way you could either cut that down or maybe introduce different foods at that time that may satisfy you?
I could substitute those with fruit, I think, as well, potentially, because it's a similar eating state.
Yeah, that's great.
And maybe just being more disciplined in general.
Yeah, it's always the hard bit. Yeah, if you're able to swap it for something like fruit, that's another easy win, again, ticking off the 2 boxes. And then I see you are eating quite a few breads and cereals in the day. So it does say 6, which is great, so you're in that, but I just wanted to touch on the quality of that. So are you choosing more white sort of breads or whole grains, wholemeal?
Generally whole grain. I pick brown rice over white rice. Or depending on the meal, and pastas and things, I guess. Yeah, no, generally more towards the whole grain side.
Perfect. Well, there's nothing there for me to add there. That's good one. Great. Awesome. Well, so I guess just to sum up, so that around about 3,000 calorie mark, which seems like you're hitting because you've been maintaining weight for a while. So that's really good. Just to kind of reinforce a little bit low in fruit and dairy, pretty in line with everything else. A little higher in your discretionary choices, but I think you're aware of that. So what we've discussed is around adding some fruit to your meals and things like salads if you can, potentially introducing breakfast with things like yogurt and fruit as well, and substituting, again, on the fruit thing, some of your discretionary choices in the evening for fruit, and adding some milk and not cheese to coffee, adding milk to coffee and cheese in your day-to-day life to get those up as well. But then, yeah, that's a really balanced diet. I think you're doing really well with a couple of tweaks. Hopefully then you can add some more nutrients, be a bit more balanced, a bit more energy, just feel overall better, help your health long term as well.
Excellent.
So based on this, I think I'm still comfortable to refer you if you want to chat to a dietitian, or would you prefer to just kind of work on these strategies for now and then see how you go?
Maybe just work on these strategies for now, I think.
Perfect. Yeah,
See how I go.
Sounds like you've got a pretty good grasp of what you're doing.
It feels like this is a very actionable things that I can do and I can add to my life now, which is good.
Perfect. Awesome. You're happy, I'm happy. Fantastic. Cool. Awesome. And I actually don't need you to sign anything, so we're all good. Hopefully that was helpful, and I'll give you some paperwork and documentation just so you can have a tangible thing that we've discussed today to work
Excellent.
on.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your help.
Thank you.